Hello and welcome back. Today I would like to talk to you about a couple things with leopard geckos. First thing is you have to make sure that you are giving them calcium. Otherwise they will have deformities at their feet and they'll end up with all kinds of problems and they won't be able to walk right and everything. So at least supply them with a minimum of 1 container in your setup. And then when you're feeding them crickets and when you're feeding them mealworms or roaches or whatever their diet happens to be, you need to sprinkle them with calcium before you feed it to them and make sure that you gut load them. Gut loading them means feeding the insect before you feed it to your geckos. So things that I feed my insects are carrots and vegetables and things like that, so that way that they have good nutrients in them, and then when a gecko eats it, the gecko in return has good nutrients. So this is 1 calcium bowl. This is another bowl with food or not food, but calcium and water. And then over here we have our mealworm bowl. And inside here are mealworms that have been sprinkled with calcium. Okay, now back here you have some leaves just to kind of give it some color and give them little places to hide. And this little thing here is actually a fish tank habitat, and if you notice, one of the little babies are hiding in there. Okay, he's a little scared. He's only a couple weeks old. So this little habitat thing that they have, it has one way in from over here underneath of the leaves and another way out from behind it. Now I also have a hideaway down here so that they can crawl through. It's like a little cave. And up here is a log with another little hiding spot. Okay, and I don't like to use heat rocks. I think heat rocks are dangerous for the geckos. So I put a rock in here that's kind of smooth, very soft compared to, or not really soft, but very smooth textured, not rough. So I don't think that the geckos are going to get hurt by that. And then it is directly underneath of the heat light. And I do have a day and night heat light. And you want to make sure that in your day and night heat light that you have them on a timer so that they're getting an adequate amount of time. And the rock will warm up naturally, which will give them a place to help digest their food. Okay, they have tons of climbing places to go. They can climb from here to up here to here. They can climb all the way up here and get closer to the heat light if they'd like to get warmer as well. So back here we also have, and I'm not sure if you can see it, but I'll lift it up so you can, a moist hide for the baby. Now I don't put moss or vermiculite in here with the babies because I'm afraid they'll eat it, but instead I use wet napkins. And as you can see, this little one is in here just chilling out. And right now, this little baby is probably about 3 inches long, and that would be from head to tail, okay? Very, very tiny, and needs lots of care. And when I cut the container out here, I did it with a knife, and then I also went over it with a heat source so that it wasn't sharp with the edges, so that way they don't get hurt. Okay, so I'm going to put that back over there. And if you notice, I made it at the same level as the rock so they can just kind of go right from the rock over into it. Alright, so that is the baby setup. And just one more thing before I show you the adults. Leopard geckos like to go to the bathroom in one space. So they will always go in the same exact spot. I don't have a problem with that. It's easy, it's quick, and simple cleanup. Substrate, make sure you're only using carpet, because if you use sand, they can digest it and then it'll cause them problems later on with their digestive tract. You don't want that. Now this is my adult side, and I have it divided up with a piece of glass that's 15 inches high so that my male can be over here and my females are over here. As you notice, they have lots of hideaways. There's a little cave up there. In here is some moss and it's wet. Then we have another bowl of calcium and water. Make sure you have a thermometer and make sure it has the little measurements down here with the percentage and everything for humidity and all, okay? Down here we have another little cave that's hidden behind the leaves. And up here they can kind of crawl across to get to the area that they need to go there. But below that is 3 drawers with vermiculite in it. And you can use moss, vermiculite, and you can also use some substrate for like hatch-right, that kind of thing, if you want to give it to where you're like having your geckos lay eggs and stuff. It'll help with that. And then you can just kind of like pull the drawers out and check them, relatively easy and simple. But it also gives them a place to go and become moist so that they can shed their skin. You don't want your gecko to not be able to shed because it can cause problems with that. And all my geckos, they seem to really like it, whether they're having babies or not. But you have this little like rock climbing thing here, and it comes down into here. Underneath, I purposely left space. So that way, if they're in there, they can come out through the bottom if they want, or they can come out through up here. And also, I'm not sure if you can really see, but there's another space over on the left, and you can see a little tail if you look closely. They can crawl down to the lower level. And during this lower level, they have another hideaway. Geckos like to hide, so you want to make sure that you're providing them with enough places to hide. See if I can get my phone down here so you can see. But that's underneath. So they have tons of spots to hide. They're very curious, and each one is different. But if you are doing a rock formation like this, you need to make sure that they're stable or they're glued together so that they don't fall on them, because a piece of slate like this could kill your gecko if you don't have it stable. Okay, and again, you're going to use carpet. Forgive me, mine needs to be cleaned. It hasn't been cleaned in about a week and a half, and they're kind of messy. This little thing is just a plant someone gave me, and I put it in there just kind of hide that little box. But the background, I don't suggest that you put the background inside of your tanks, because the bugs, if you feed your geckos in the in your habitat, will climb up on it, and then your geckos can't get to them. Plus, it's styrofoam, and in case you haven't noticed, these are heat lights and they get hot. A lot of people don't realize that. In fact, I just adopted a gecko, and that little gecko's tank was all melted up at the top from the heat lights. I'm completely surprised that the gecko's habitat did not catch on fire, or the house that it was in didn't, because of the way that they had it set up. So you want to be really careful what you put in your tank to make sure it doesn't catch on fire, because these do get super hot. Okay? I mean, after all, it's almost 90 degrees in there. So be careful with that. And then on this side, I have the male, and here's like a little rock formation that has 3 little climb hides. So he can climb in one and walk up, or he can get to the top and get warm. And back here, there's another hide made of rock. And then I have his food up on some more slate, just to kind of give it some depth. And in here is some vermiculite and some moist hide. Now he's about ready to shed, so, and he might have even shed already, but he's in there and he's getting moist and he's cozy and he's comfy. And they should always have a moist hide. Make sure that when you're doing it, if you're using vermiculite, it stays moist. If you're using moss, you're going to have to wet it quite frequently because it dries out. Okay, so sorry about that. That was my kid coming home from school, knocking on the door to get in. So moist hide, you're going to have vermiculite. It stays moist when you wet it. Moss on top. Vermiculite will hold the water a little bit longer. The moss will not. You'll have to wet it more frequently. Okay, so they need to have a moist hide box. And as far as feeding them, you can feed them mealworms, and I will show you something. These are larger mealworms. You have to be careful in size because some things they cannot eat. But this is a pretty good size for them, and they seem to do pretty well with this. If you notice, there's some really big ones in there, and then there are some smaller ones. Now, I'll show you over here too, because this might be easier to see the size difference. But you see the littler ones in there, kind of more like over in this area. And then here's one here crawling. They're smaller than the other ones. They're a little bit more filling. And they stay in there after I've gut loaded them. But as far as the crickets go, I don't feed them crickets in here. They get fed crickets separately in a different container. When I'm feeding them crickets, I actually put them in a critter keeper. And I take out the mealworm containers, of course, and the egg crate. I feed them in there, and I do one gecko at a time, and I calcium the crickets. So I make sure I cover the crickets completely with calcium so that they're being gut loaded. Or not gut loaded, but covered with calcium so that the gecko is getting all the calcium it needs. And they are also gut loaded. And behind that little bowl, you can't really see it, but there's vegetables. Okay, so that's the crickets, and I'm not sure if you can really tell, but this little guy, he actually still has calcium on him. He looks kind of white. He's crawling around, and he will be dinner pretty soon. So basically, you are going to gut load your animal, or gut load your food with some vegetables before you feed them, and you're going to cover them in calcium. Make sure you're going to have plenty of hiding spaces for your leopard gecko. If you're housing more than one leopard gecko, you need to make sure that your housing is large enough. Otherwise, they will fight, and then it won't be a friendly environment anymore. Some people say it's best to have them housed individually. Well, I can tell you, this little guy in here, he's been housed by himself for a couple of weeks, and I took him to the vet today because I thought he was having something wrong with him. It turns out he's just depressed because he's not with his friends. However, some geckos are better alone, so you need to be the judge of that, and you need to just kind of be cautious and watch your geckos. The two babies that I had, they're housed together, and eventually I will see if they will work with the other geckos, and if they won't, then they'll go back to being housed in here or individually, whichever is going to make them happiest. But in the meantime, I hope this helped you out, and if you have any questions, leave a comment below. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.